Hello indie game fans, July was packed full of new updates, DLC and releases that I missed, so let's begin with Astral Ascent Yamat the Breach Traveler, a paid DLC which unlocks a new playable character which plays rather differently as compared to the existing ones, with new spells, abilities, perks, weapons and more, with a signature ability transforming her into a flying draconic form that rains death onto the battlefield, where a bunch of work has gone into this, such as 1000 plus fully voiced new lines of dialogue, but I would see this as more of a support the developer kind of DLC rather than being critical for the game itself. Here's a sweet looking roguelite shooter which takes place in isolated screens, so I wouldn't quite consider Angelstruck to be a roguelite platformer, having more in common with arcade style shooters, but still, it looks pretty neat. You are destroying the forces of heaven as you attempt to barge your way in, with plenty of fun combos and synergies to unlock depending on the perks and abilities that you choose, with a little bit of a Vampire Survivors, or more specifically, Seraph's Last Stand feel to the game, but much prettier of course. This video is brought to you by Sunset Hills, a beautiful hand-drawn narrative puzzle adventure game starring an anthropomorphic dog. Our protagonist is a novelist who is travelling by train to various cities, with the twist being that he is a soldier who was discharged from the army after the war and is revisiting old comrades to reminisce about their past experiences, with the purpose of his journey being revealed through the course of the game. As such, while it looks super cozy, there are some darker, perhaps more emotional themes in this game, with the art style and animation being one of the best that I have seen. This plays like a point-and-click adventure game in which you are walking around, talking to characters, picking up key items to solve puzzles and so on, with the intricately detailed backgrounds and environments being one of the highlights as well. This releases on August 21st, 2024, and together with the wholesome game celebration on Steam, there is a time-limited public demo available to try, so give that a go, wishlist the game and buy it when it releases via the link in the description below. We'll go in alphabetical order for a little bit until the top 10, so let's continue with the 1.0 release of 7 Days to Die, an open world zombie survival crafting game which seems like it might be overdone at this point, but then you realize that this is one of the OGs, a game which released in Steam Early Access in 2013, so more than 10 years later, it is in a state that they consider done. While in Early Access, this game has become an absolute juggernaut, selling millions upon millions of copies, but the developer has very humble roots, being started by 3 developers back in 2012, and has since grown, with my estimates based on LinkedIn to be about 30 people working at this studio, so very impressive work from a small team. It is what you would expect of scavenging for supplies, crafting equipment and constructing your own base while fending off zombies, outlaws and other players. But the 10 years of work really shows, and it is one of the best, making it of interest if you love games like this. This next title also released out of early access, in which Age of Defense looks like Kingdom Rush, having a very similar art style, so I'm not giving them points for that. But it is not a direct clone, since you can freely place down towers, and they are more like classic towers from tower defense games, so you are not spawning units into the lane for example, and has a neat caveman theme, along with an impressive variety of enemies and even giant screen-filling bosses, and since I do love the genre, I wanted to give this a mention. In addition to the straight-up idle/clicker/incremental game, where it is literally about clicking boxes and watching numbers go up, a slightly different take on the idea is to have RPG elements added to it, which fleshes out the experience, and such is the case with Bloobs Adventure Idle. Our Bloob adventures across the ever-expanding world, battling enemies and pushing further and further out, where you have to decide where to go, who to fight and what resources to gather and refine so that you can progress even further. People have likened this to RuneScape due to how skills and crafting works, and is pretty impressive for an idle game despite the relatively simple pixel art. Here's a neat action roguelite that successfully mixed and matched ideas from different games in Codename Ocean Keeper, one that has Vampire Survivors inspiration due to the swarms of enemies, and borrows from Dome Keeper's mining element with plenty of upgrade options and permanent progression from run to run, as you pilot a powerful mech to destroy hordes of enemies. This results in a similar dopamine rush that you get from Survivors style games, so if interested, give this a look.
I've decided to take up the path of a warrior and want to learn about the needs of this place.
Now this title came out of nowhere since, to be honest, I did see Elder Legacy pop up on the list of new releases for the week, but was unsure of its quality, so I left it off indie gaming this week, since, among other reasons, it had an AI-generated capsule image, but this open-world action-adventure RPG has proved themselves worthy. It's Skyrim-like in nature, but with a behind-the-shoulder third-person camera in which you are free to explore this medieval fantasy world, fighting skeletons, venturing into swamps and more, also having some light survival elements, all for a very reasonable $5, so you might want to check this out. Okay, here's a neat looking game, but GOOAL comes with a big caveat since none of the reviews are in English, and based on Google Translate auto-detect, all of them seem to be in Russian, so maybe this developer has a very specific Russian audience for some reason, but this is a sports mini-game title about soccer. You have balls with special abilities and kind of looks like Peglin due to the little character up on top, and might be worth checking out. This next title comes to us from an unlikely source since Helltown Revival is an update to a game from 2017, coming to us from the developer of the ultra cutesy Born of Bread of all games, in which this is a very different kind of game, since it is a first-person low-poly horror adventure title. The Revival update adds new models and animations, as well as improvements to the environments, level design, gameplay mechanics, storyline, and even a new soundtrack, being one for fans of the genre. I'm a fan of RTS titles since I grew up with the classics, which is why ReEarth got my attention, one that describes itself as a tower defense game, which is not that accurate in my opinion, since there are no lanes and portals in this game, so I would consider this to be more of a survival defense RTS. In addition to turrets, you have a whole base to build up, and critically, have to construct units as well, which is the differentiating point, but will be for fans of strategy games. An interesting, very weird, very indie game is Retale, a play on words on working a retail job, having to stock shelves and deal with customers to avoid getting fired, having an adorable art style as well. Another success in the farming game space is Roots of Pacha, a game that has a prehistoric theme, which is its main differentiator, who just released the version 1.2 update, which adds a bunch of stuff, along with Xbox ports and cross-platform play. Among other updates, this gives you the ability to ride baby mammoths, send your children to school, use an early watering system and more, with the best news being that there are still plans for more post-launch support of an update that will add 2 new regions, different ways to fish, volcanic caves and more, so it's good to see the team continuing to work on this. The success of The Exit 8 has resulted in a fair number of clones attempting to copy it to varying levels of success, with a decent try being Shift 87. You are exploring an office environment and have to memorize it, detecting and highlighting any anomalies that you may find, with it having a more explicit horror theme. But interestingly, the developer talks about having 66 anomalies to find, so why is it named Shift 87? But I'll leave that to you to find out.
Let's start Codename.
I love my tower defense games, so a neat, if smaller title is Siegebreaker, a game in which you do not have free placement of towers, so the strategy comes in the form of the order of upgrades, of which tower and in what combination to use them, which is where it gets interesting. It is not too long, clocking in at about 8 to 10 hours, but still a decent, smaller game for fans of the genre. Another one of those huge games chugging away in the background is Sker Retale, one that is essentially Call of Duty zombies but with a slightly different feel, where you have to fend off waves of zombies with steampunk weapons. This released the House of the Damned update, which added a new map with extensive post-launch support planned for this game, so it might be worth your time to grab a couple of friends and get into this game. A 1.0 release of interest is Smack Studio, one that looks like it's for platform fighter fans, since it is essentially indie Smash Brothers, but has a bunch of stuff that you can do with it, including both a character and level creator. As such, it might be more of a development tool than a game, think RPG Maker for example, although it is all built within the program itself, so I don't think you'll be exporting any completed platform fighter games anytime soon, although animations are fair game, but still, people seem to love it, so maybe give it a look. Another 1.0 release of interest is Song of the Prairie, a 3D farming sim title that follows in the footsteps of Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon, set after a hero defeats a demon, which results in a new era of peace. It looks wonderful, having some adorable, rotund animal designs, also having fantasy elements and a bunch of vibrant colours, looking very pleasant, and while not My Time at Pacha popular, looks to be a viable alternative if you want to play a game like this. I was a little bit hesitant to cover Songs of Death during its week of release, since I couldn't tell if there was English language support, but the launch did confirm it, and it's a roguelite rhythm action title with Vampire Survivors inspiration and a Chinese Three Kingdoms theme. So how's that for interesting? There are roguelite style upgrades which allow you to kill enemies more easily, but the rhythm element is what gets me, looking to have one of the more unique concepts out there. Okay, so this next title is definitely not indie, since Star Wars Bounty Hunter is of course a Star Wars game, and is a remake of a game from 2002, but developer Esper has a mixed track record when it comes to these, from the excellent Tomb Raider 1-3 remasters to the horrendous Battlefront Classic Collection, so I gave it a little space, and hey, what do you know, this is a pretty good one of these, in which you play as Jango Fett, hired to eliminate a Dark Jedi. A smaller title that has done very well for itself is Stolen Hearts Wolf Knight, a self-described action precision platformer which is level-based, where you have to find the lost hearts and to guide them back home safely. It has an interesting art style, mixing pixel art with the almost 3D model of the wolf, where our hero has different forms like the aforementioned Wolf Knight, but also an owl and more, with different abilities for each that you need to wrap your head around. A gorgeous puzzle city builder title, which also released out of early access, is named Terrascape, following in the footsteps of games like Dorfromantic, but with a more realistic art style that looks awesome. You are drawing buildings and choosing where to place them, with adjacent and nearby tiles granting you bonuses depending on what they are, definitely having an element of strategy to this game. It's a peaceful, relaxing city builder, so you will not get ambushed by enemies spawning in, instead allowing you to sit back, relax, plan, strategize, and enjoy the experience, having a merged building mechanic that looks fascinating, which is its unique selling point in my opinion. Developer Strange Scaffold continues to crush it, making very weird and esoteric games, and their latest is Clickcoding, which of course is a play on the word cuckolding, down to having a man seated in the corner of a hotel room watching you do it, with it in this case being to click on the clicker until you get to 10,000. While technically a clicker game, this has a narrative element as you try to figure out what the hell is going on, and it's a very weird but quite a clever idea, so definitely give this a go, or at least watch some YouTube videos on this. One of the interesting tower defense games in early access is Orcs, since it added deck building elements and has swarms of green skins that will make They Are Billions proud, releasing the Phoenix Rising update which made it even better. All offensive buildings are now grouped into one of 3 categories in Fierce, Resilient and Cunning, which act as the rock paper scissors equivalent in this game to most effectively take out the enemy. There are also major changes to how stat scaling works, changes to how enemies spawn, to map size, an easier way to get into the game and so much more, with it chugging along nicely in early access so far. A neat action platformer in early access is The Devil Within Satgat, which comes to us from a Korean developer, releasing the simply titled Summer Update, which is their first major one for the game. This adds improvements to the levels, difficulty modes, more distinction between weapons, adding of accessories which augment your strength, elite monsters, mystery treasure, fast travel, a refined parry system and so much more. So it's good to see player feedback get taken into account as they continue to tweak and improve this game. One of the standout cozy games from 2023 is Smooshy Come Home, a 3D platformer in which you play as a mushroom, releasing an update which came as a surprise to me titled Heart of the Forest. This adds post-game content to the game in the form of one new main area, 2 mini areas, more mushrooms to uncover, achievements to unlock, new music, items, mechanics, skins, and even a secret upgrade, all for free, and shows that this game is indeed a labour of love. Contrary to what some news sites are reporting, yes, while Palworld player numbers have fallen off dramatically since its insane spike around launch in January 2024, this game is far from dead and sees a healthy number of players coming back whenever new updates are released, such as the Sakurajima update, which adds a whole new island to explore, filled with many new pals, a new enemy faction, increases to player level cap, new resources, a new raid, and so much more, where it still amazes me that this game managed to eat Pokemon's lunch when it comes to monster taming games and is an amazing accomplishment. Another title that has been in early access for quite a while is Traveler's Rest, which began in July 2020, and 4 years on, this has an impressive 9,700 Steam reviews, which only looks to grow by the day. They released the City and Story update, which adds the first bit of lore to the game rather than just being a sandbox tavern management game, adding a new tutorial if you're new to it, and also access to the city, filled with NPCs and shops with all sorts of wondrous items. The skill tree has also been revamped, along with various other additions and improvements, where this already is one of the most popular live sim games which I don't see enough people talking about, and maybe this update will start giving it more attention.
We're here. Let's hope this is worth it. Alright, team.
A highlight from last year is the all-action first-person shooter Trepang Square, in which you played as a super soldier and took inspiration from First Encounter Assault Recon, releasing the Blade Kisser DLC. As the title proposes, the focus of this is the addition of a sword, which allows you to slice through enemies like a hot knife through butter, but also adds a machine gun, revolver, 2 new side missions, 9 combat simulator maps and more, and based on the number of Steam reviews, has sold decently well for a DLC, which you don't see that often, so if you love the original, give this a go, or if you have not, why not pick up both? Here's a wonderful 1.0 release of interest named Ogu and the Secret Forest, a 2D Zelda-style action-adventure game that comes to us from a Korean developer which stars a baby platypus. The art style and animations are the highlight here, looking oh so charming, but does have combat elements, although that is not too serious and will be great for younger kids. It is fairly straightforward in terms of story and dungeons with the expected puzzles, but does also have side activities like fishing, cooking, pottery and more. As such, it's a very charming little title that I would recommend, if only for how adorable it is, but it's a solid game overall as well. One of the most amazing success stories out of roguelites in recent years, other than Vampire Survivors, is Dome Keeper, one that is part mining and part defense title, gathering an astonishing 11,000 Steam reviews since 2022 as of recording, and they continue to chug along, releasing the A Keeper's Duty free update. I remember the launch version of this seeming to be lacking content, but they have made good on that, and looks like they are not going to stop with more to come, so go support a great team by getting this game if you have not. Watch this video for more pixel art games.